Assange. In just a few hours on Fox News Channel, 10 p.m. Eastern, right after the Wayne Dupree show here on Rsbn, Assange will be featured in an interview with Sean Hannity. We haven't seen anything here other than the details of the press release from Fox News, but the interview will, predictably enough, touch on, among other topics, so-called Russian hacking, the 2016 presidential election, the Obama regime, and what to expect from the soon-to-come Trump presidency. When with Hannity, Assange will almost definitely repeat what he has been saying regarding the Russian government, which of course the media and Democrats are ignoring, and that is that the Russian government is not the WikiLeaks source. We do not have any information on whether the name Seth Rich will at any point come up during the interview, but that could be something interesting to look out for. And Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about when I mention Seth Rich. Now, let me give people some background on Assange. Plenty of people called him 2016's Person of the Year, or at least runner-up for that to President-elect Trump. Assange is currently living in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. He's under political asylum, and he's there because he sought refuge from an interesting, perhaps dubious, Swedish investigation into sex assault allegations that occurred in 2010. Assange has denied those allegations. Sweden, of course, could not only try him and imprison him, but they could extradite Assange to the United States. And the U.S. could pursue the death penalty if Assange is charged and convicted of publishing government secrets through WikiLeaks. But back to the interview at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. This is Assange's first face-to-face cable news appearance. He did, however, in December, call into Sean Hannity's radio show. There, Hannity told Assange that you've done us a favor by exposing gaps in U.S. cybersecurity. It is worth noting that Hannity has done something of a 180 on Assange. A few years ago, Hannity was a pretty strong critic of WikiLeaks. Now, Assange has claimed that he did not receive the hacked emails from Russia, as I mentioned before, and he previously released a statement saying that WikiLeaks was not trying to influence the outcome of the election. Not that Assange hasn't been very critical of Hillary Clinton, especially related to her tendency toward warmongering. A little more background for you, Assange did an interview with an Italian paper called La Repubblica, which was published on December 23rd. According to a translation of it, which was published by the left-wing British paper The Guardian. Well, before I tell you this, keep in mind that this translation, as published by The Guardian, has been criticized for the way it was edited and translated, but I don't think that affects the quotes you're going to hear here. Or maybe it does, but take them with a grain of salt, I guess. But nevertheless, from The Guardian, Assange said his feelings about the U.S. election results were actually mixed. And in that article, he did go on to sharply criticize Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, and he provided what really was an ambivalent assessment of Trump's ascent to the White House. Here's an important quote. Hillary Clinton's election would have been a consolidation of power in the existing ruling class of the United States. And here is how Assange described where Trump himself stood in terms of a ruling class. What he said was, Donald Trump is not a DC insider. He is part of the wealthy ruling elite of the United States, and he is gathering around him a spectrum of other rich people and several idiosyncratic personalities. Now, in that regard, Assange also said they do not by themselves form an existing structure, so it is a weak structure which is displacing and destabilizing the pre-existing central power network within DC. It is a new patronage structure which will evolve rapidly. But at the moment, its looseness means there are opportunities for change in the United States. Change for the worse and change for the better. Okay, we've done more than enough now to promote something appearing on a network which is not ours, but hey, we try to focus on what's most important to our audience, and right now, that is what we consider number one. So part of Julian Assange's interview with Sean Hannity will be on Fox News at 10 p.m. Eastern Time after the Wayne Dupree show here on Rsbn. And we have more news related to Fox News Channel. Megyn Kelly ended the months-long speculation today about where her future would be. As you may have heard, Kelly is heading to NBC. The details of her contract were not available as of a little while ago, but we can speculate that the terms are very generous. And that's because Fox itself had offered her more than $20 million a year. And that number is according to an October report in Vanity Fair. And yeah, we really like to cite sources here at Rsbn. We probably bend over backward the other way to do it, but that's because we're just, the whole, what I call neo-plagiarism sort of tweaks us, bothers us. But Kelly, who will stay on Fox until Friday, really has been Fox's second biggest star after Bill O'Reilly. She averaged 2.7 million viewers for the Kelly File. Do I really need to remind people about the way Kelly treated President-elect Trump at the first presidential debate in August 2015? If so, let me remind you of her question, or rather so-called question, what it was. You've got women you don't like, you've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals, blah, blah, blah. Trump, of course, didn't just take it. After that debate, the now president-elect tweeted, hold on a second, we may be having a technical issue here. It happens. Work with us. All right. Trump, of course, didn't just take it. After that debate, the now president-elect tweeted, "Wow, Megyn Kelly really bombed tonight. People are going wild on Twitter. Funny to watch." And of course, this topic came up today quite a bit on social media. And for those of you who are watching this for the first time, we really do try to pay attention to social media. And now, for the first time, we can say it's 2017. So we try to have a 2017 approach to doing things. But here's what Kelly wrote on Facebook. "I have decided to end my time at FNC, incredibly enriched for the experiences I've had." And Rupert Murdoch was quite professional about it all. In a statement, he thanked Kelly for her 12 years of contributions to the network. And he went on to say, "We hope she enjoys tremendous success in her career and wish her and her family all the best." But as for more colorful posts on social media, according to what Stephen Kurlander of Monticello, New York had to say on Facebook, adios, new set of legs on the way. Jack Posobiec, definitely follow him if you can on Twitter, that's Posobiec, he tweeted, "Sad that all her maladroit attacks on conservatives are now exposed as nothing but tawdry additions for left-wing apparatchik media." A tweet from Craig R. Britton. "Congratulations to Megyn Kelly for getting at least $15 million a year to be on," it's going to be more than that, "at least $15 million a year to be on NBC in spite of a complete lack of journalistic talent." A Facebook comment from Sean Reber, "Maybe they'll fill the seat with that Tommy idiot. She'd fit in perfectly." And a tweet from Cassie Dillon, who you can see right here on RSBN's Raised Right Thursday night. Cassie tweeted, "Sorry, but Megyn Kelly will not make NBC great again." And a final thought from me on this. I don't think it's that far off to suggest that Megyn Kelly is the current version of Katie Couric. If you know your media history, you may recall that CBS majorly overpaid in 2006 to bring Couric over from NBC. That was when Couric was 49 years old. Kelly is 46 right now. Moving on. New Year's Eve in the new normal for Europe. Last year, you may remember, there was a major outburst of sex attacks in Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve. Something like 1,000 Fräuleins were sexually assaulted by Angela Merkel's beloved migrants. Mainstream media, of course, did its very best to cover all that up, so plenty of you didn't even hear about it. Well, you didn't have one incident like that quite to the same extent this year in Europe. But again, this is the new normal, and sex assaults on native European women by so-called migrants are just a risk one assumes, it seems. And probably one reason that there weren't as many was that the women were more wary of it and there was more police protection. But anyhow, thanks to what people like Brian Williams of MSNBC, call fake news outlets, The information does come out there these days, and on this topic, Breitbart is the one that really went above and beyond. From a story today called Sex Attacks Plague Austria's New Year's Eve Celebrations by Breitbart's Chris Tomlinson, we have this quote. Emergency services were inundated Saturday night across Austria as multiple reports of sex attacks emerged, many committed by young men described as having a foreign appearance. That same story also includes this passage. Police described the attacks as being coordinated much like the Cologne attacks last year, in which a group of men single out women, surround them, and sexually assault them, a rape game known as Taharush in the Middle East and North Africa. How nice. Make sure to take note of how much you hear about all this from professional so-called feminists who have been so ostentatiously outraged by the sexism of President-elect Trump. And a few more things from Breitbart, all articles in the last day or two, and the titles pretty much tell you all you need to know. France claims no incident after 1,000 cars torched on New Year's Eve. Revealed, 1,000-man mob attack sets Germany's oldest church alight on New Year's Eve. That was in Dortmund, Germany. Also, young migrants wreak New Year's Eve havoc in Bavarian City, and they're talking there about the city of Augsburg. And of course, there is Cologne police attacked for racial profiling during New Year's Eve security operation. Economic news from today. There was another sign that the new administration will bring change we really can believe in. Ford was in the news after it announced it was canceling plans to build a $1.6 billion plant in Mexico. Ford said instead it will invest $700 million in Michigan to produce more cars there. And why are they doing this? Here's a hint. It's not because of Obamacare and not because of the DREAM Act. According to Ford CEO Mark Fields, Ford is making the change because it is encouraged by the pro-growth policies that President-elect Trump and the new Congress have indicated they will pursue. You can expect a similar announcement from like this from GM soon, since President-elect Trump tweeted this morning that GM would face import taxes on Chevy Cruze hatchbacks if they do go through with their plans to produce the cars in Mexico. More on Trump. If you've watched or read any news outlet today, you're probably aware of this whole brouhaha over the Office of Congressional Ethics. To summarize, the OCE is an investigative body created in 2008 to look into potential ethics violations by House members. The body is independent in the sense that it's composed of civilians rather than House members, and it doesn't have to answer to the House Ethics Committee. Now, last night, House Republicans voted to curb the powers of the OCE, basically making everything that the OCE does subject to House Ethics Committee approval. This, predictably, led to an outrage-a-palooza, where every media outlet in existence tried to outdo each other in indignation. President-elect Trump tweeted out his disapproval of the move, and after that, House Republicans quickly relented this afternoon and said they would no longer pursue the proposed changes to the OCE. Now, I'm sure you don't want to listen to me giving the same soapbox speech on this that other journalists gave today. Of course, we have a different editorial opinion here at Rsbn, but I would like to point out a couple of other things you may not have heard in the mainstream media. First off, this committee wasn't even formed until 2008, and Congress actually seems to have gotten along fine, well, fine for Congress, with a grain of salt there, but it seems to have gotten by without it for the first 219 years. So let's not assume this committee is absolutely essential to a properly functioning republic. Second, the way the mainstream media portrayed it, the only reason House Republicans proposed the changes is because they want to violate ethics and not be punished for it. Now, I'm not saying there's not a reason some of them are proposing the changes. I honestly don't know. I misspoke. It's going to happen again. I'm not saying that is not a reason some of them may be proposing the changes because they want to violate ethics. I honestly don't know, but I'm thinking it's probably not the only reason they wanted to curb the committee. You think? Seems like at least a reasonable thing to ask about. Unless, of course, you're in the mainstream media and you'd prefer an oversimplified picture that agrees with your narrative. What could these other factors be? Well, by digging around in the later paragraphs buried in all the stories about this, a couple factors that seem possible are the committee's accusations were made public, even if the House Ethics Committee ruled the accusations were unfounded. Also, some House members thought the committee didn't grant due process to those it investigated. In what way was due process not followed? Hard to say, because nobody felt they needed to report on this aspect of the story. The point is, rather than jumping to a quick, easy conclusion when something like this happens, how about this novel idea? Try to understand both sides of the story first. Well, even if the rest of the media just has principles that prevent them from doing this, we here at Rsbn tonight will do so, at least to the best we can. Speaking of which, here's another case where both sides were not examined. And surprise, surprise, the side not examined was the Republican side. The New York Times today reported that, quote, Nixon tried to spoil Johnson's Vietnam peace talks in '68, end quote. From this headline, seems like the story is pretty clear. Nixon wanted to win the election, so he tried to prevent an awesome peace deal that would save hundreds of thousands of lives. But if you read carefully down to the buried later paragraphs of the article, you can make out another side to the story. Johnson wanted to make a peace deal because he thought doing so would help his VP, Hubert Humphrey, win the election over Nixon. But Nixon was worried that Johnson was so eager to make a peace deal to help Humphrey that he had reasons to be against it. One of Johnson's own aides, by the way, expressed this concern as well. So really, what we don't have here is the situation the headline suggested, that Nixon was simply selfishly trying to help himself by sabotaging a good peace deal. The actual situation is muddier than that, and Nixon probably had a good reason for opposing the peace deal. But that wouldn't make for such a good headline in a leftist paper like the New York Times, would it? So remember, next time you read anything from the New York Times, and we certainly don't advocate that you do so, imagine it comes with a giant warning label. Reading stories from this publication can be hazardous to the truth. And other Trump news from today. Some inauguration RSVPs. Former President George W. Bush will be coming. So will former President and serial sexual predator Bill Clinton. And with that, I add that Trump will be in a pretty strong position to strongly suggest prosecution of Hillary Clinton. You remember the lock her up chants, many of which you heard here on Rsbn during our live coverage with our own cameras of the various Trump rallies before the election and after the election. Next up, it did not take too long into 2017 for the media to start doing publicity work for the NAACP, for the NAACP's latest protest or march or sit-in against racism, and then, of course, tweeting pictures of themselves standing up to power or something. And this, by the way, this story is from right here in Alabama. And today's effort was from the sit-in category. The NAACP, which I think it's fine to refer to as nincompoops actively advancing communist propaganda. Let me quote one combined tweet and proud selfie here. They are, quote, occupying the Mobile office of Jeff Sessions until he withdraws as AG nominee, and that's the exact wording of it, or we're arrested. What did you think? That they were going to protest blacks murdering other blacks in Chicago in record numbers? Please. I like these Facebook comments by someone whom I've never met, but who does comment on my page a lot, named Ron Raducanu, who reminded people of future Attorney General Sessions' actual record. He commented, "You've got to be kidding me." He desegregated schools in Alabama and pushed for the death sentence of a Klansman who murdered a black boy in cold blood, and got it when the man was convicted of murder. Raducanu, and I really hope I'm pronouncing the name right, he also wrote, those allegations 30 years ago were never proven and were considered a smear campaign to keep him off the bench. People need to read more and talk less, idiots. Wall Street. Today was the first day of trading of 2017. So people do pay a lot of attention to that, simply just because it's the first day. And what happened? The Dow rose 119.16 points, or 0.6%, It closed at 19,881.76. So 20,000 is clearly within sights as the post-election day surge continues. And I might add that that post-election day surge is, of course, the complete opposite of what our intellectual superiors said would happen. Israel's in the news. It certainly was in the news, and the timing is suspect right before Hanukkah started. That's already like 10 days old, so we won't go into that, but let's just say that the UN, John Kerry, and Barack Obama took advantage of an opportunity to show their true colors as far as the Jewish state is concerned. We'll leave it at that. Oh, and by the way, John Kerry served in Vietnam, in case you hadn't heard. As for today, the Jerusalem Post reported that leaders of the so-called Palestinian people are promising a new violent uprising if Donald Trump continues to follow through on his plans to relocate the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to what is actually the Israeli capital, Jerusalem. Here's what Fatah Central Committee member Sultan Abu al-Ainain told Egypt's Al Ghad TV on Sunday. And we have this thanks to MEMRI, M-E-M-R-I. You should look that up. It's a great source. They do great work. But here's the quote. I believe that any American act of stupidity will ignite the Palestinian territories. Fighting words, no? And we have some social media commentary on that from Facebook comments. I like these. There might be other great ones out there, but we can only look at so many. But I like this one from Joshua Brett, whom I actually know. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem probably would cause more violence, but the strange tap dance that the U.S. and the rest of the world have done regarding Jerusalem hasn't exactly led to peace either. It's time for the U.S. to do the right thing, make the move, and settle this thing once and for all. And also on Facebook, Gary Newsonow. So be it. Every Saturday, pretty much, Jerusalem is mentioned in the Torah or prayer book. I'm pretty sure Torah is at least 3,000 years or more old. The Dome of the Rock isn't even half that age, and in fact was built on the site of the Second Temple, which was destroyed by the Romans in the 1st century. Moving on. We have, of course, a celebrity who can't resist opening up their yap about Trump news. This time it's from an individual named Bruce Springsteen. So I better provide some background in case some of you are under 30 or so and haven't heard of him. But he's a singer who was once relevant in the 1970s and 80s. Well, Mr. Springsteen just shared some political wisdom he had about the president-elect with a podcaster named Mark Maron. And, well, a good excuse to get a little bit of water here because I'm going to, in a second, put on my soulful, deep-thinking Bruce Springsteen voice now. By the way, Frank Caliendo and Rich Little, trust me, your jobs are safe. I'm going to do the best I can. Shout out to the late, great Danny Gans as well. But here is some of what Springsteen had to say. Whether it's a rise in hate crimes, people feeling they have license to speak and behave in ways that previously were considered un-American and are un-American, that's what he's appealing to. My fears are that those things find a place in ordinary civil society. What else? I've felt disgust before, but never the kind of fear that you feel now. Springsteen blabbed on. It's as simple as the fear of, is someone simply competent enough to do this particular job? Do they simply have the pure competence to be put in the position of such responsibility? Springsteen also called Trump a toxic narcissist back in October. Well, earlier today, we actually ran into reporter Joe Biggs. He was in the office here, so it wasn't a coincidence. You may have heard of him. You should have heard of him by now. So I asked him what his opinion was of the political commentary offered by Springsteen, who, by the way, is 67 years old now. And here's what Joe Biggs had to say. Springsteen is trying to remain relevant to a younger crowd by playing the dump Trump thing because he knows how palatable that is to the leftist media. When was the last time he put out a relevant song? the age group he's pandering to has no idea who he is. He may want to focus on making music. We actually went ahead, we do our research here, and looked up Springsteen's discography on Wikipedia, and we learned that Springsteen has had exactly one song that since 1997 has cracked the top 60 singles according to Billboard magazine. And that actually was 2002, I guess 15 years ago, something called The Rising. I've heard it, but I couldn't even hum it for you. And by the way, it cracked the top 60, but that only made it all the way up the chart to number 52. By the way, one last thing on Springsteen. I happen to like this Facebook comment by Lori Boxer that I saw earlier. Hey, Bruce, I have an idea. You promise to shut the F up about Trump and he'll promise not to sing. How about that? In the meantime, why don't you scare yourself up to Canada? By the way, I wouldn't mind hearing Trump singing at some point. That's just me. Oh, one more actually. I like this by Jason Marino. I did not think it was possible, but Bruce Springsteen's political insight is worse than his singing voice. News from the city of Philadelphia, a leftist cesspool for decades. It's had Democratic rule. You know, a lot of these cities, the big cities, have a Republican mayor who's really a liberal every now and then, but not Philadelphia. Straight Democratic all the time. And I actually happen to be from a suburb near there. But new laws, they often go into effect this time of year, and that is the case with the city of Philadelphia's new beverage tax, which affects sugary drinks. According to Philadelphia Business Journal, the tax is meant to generate millions in funding for the city's beleaguered school system. It's always about the children, right? The tax is imposed at the distributor level, so it's up to the beverage companies to pass the cost on to retailers, which can then pass it on to consumers in what's known as the price you pay for it. But as for the effect of the tax, some items are nearly doubling in price. According to Philadelphia's ABC affiliate, Channel 6, I know that well, the 1.5 cent per ounce tax amounts to 18 cents on a 12-ounce can of soda, or $1.44 on a six-pack of 16-ounce bottles. Now that outlet, it also provided a photo from a customer at a Save-A-Lot in Northeast Philly. In that photo, a 12-pack of Lipton Diet Green Tea, which normally costs $4.99, is now $8.03. And let's bring out co-producer, co-writer Steve Lookner. This may not be classic news, but I think it's a good commentary on the times. He had an interesting email exchange very recently. It was with a model on, what's that show called? The Bachelor. I watched it, I think, back in 2002 for a few episodes. Haven't really watched it since. We're, of course, more partial to The Apprentice here. But this was interesting because she sort of got into it with him. And, well, you guys love hearing about Steve anyway. So you love hearing him. You want more Steve on the show. So here he is.
Hi, guys. Hey, happy 2017,
Did I
Adam.
time this right? Happy 2017 to you.
I think we got it.
Okay.
So, anyway, it's good to see you, everybody. So, yeah, I had this Twitter exchange yesterday, and it wasn't done with the intent of talking about it on your show, but I thought it was something that your viewers might be interested in. And by the way, if you'd like to see this exchange, you can follow me on Twitter at Lookner, Lookner. Do you want to take this opportunity to promote your?
You know what? Why
Twitter?
not? At Adam_Taxin at rsbn.com. And you know what? I just happened to remember Will Nardi's Twitter. I don't think I've ever mentioned that on air. He's at Will the Thinker. Might as well just throw it out there. Go
Okay.
on.
Also, Will sent us some marinara sauce today as a gift, but I don't think I'm going to try it. Anyways, this exchange came up because I was reading my Twitter feed yesterday, and there's this guy, Richard Grinnell, who I follow, and I know you like promoting Twitter feeds. He has some interesting conservative tweets. It's at Richard Grinnell, and I think it's Grennell. Anyways, and so Richard Grinnell had retweeted a tweet which was by this model, Olivia Caridi. And Olivia Caridi was on The Bachelor, I guess. I don't watch The Bachelor, but she was on a couple of seasons ago. And she had said something. I have the tweet here, and it was like this outraged tweet, and I want to read it to you. And it said, the tweet was, this is lame and sexist and misogynistic and pathetic and stupid and rude and gross. And I noticed that this woman posting this had like
Well, you gotta tell them what the picture was.
So I will. So, but I'll just say
sure.
so. If she was, all right, so yes, she was talking about an article in Politico, but I noticed that this woman posting this had 38,000 followers, and also her tweet that it was misogynistic and sexist and lame and stupid and gross already had 500 likes, and I was like, wow, this is an influential person. So this is a really influential person tweeting about an important subject, a sexist article, and I saw it was linked. What she was talking about was an article in Politico, and I looked what the article was in Politico, and the title was, I have this written down here, losing a presidential bid is a lot like getting dumped. That was the title of the article. Losing a presidential bid is a lot like getting dumped. And they're shifting me over now. Okay, so anyways, I saw this tweet that said this article in Politico is sexist and misogynistic. I hope I said misogynistic before instead of homophobic. I believe I did. Anyways, she was saying this article was sexist and misogynistic. And then I saw, again, the article was about how losing a presidential bid is like getting dumped. And I looked at the article, and I saw the clip of the article, the screenshot, and it was just a picture of Hillary Clinton. And I was like, that doesn't seem that sexist or misogynistic, but maybe I'll look at it.
Even a bad picture of her. She was okay. She was fairly good in the picture for Hillary Clinton.
No, and so I just, I agree with you. And so, but I just figured, let me look. I want to look and see, what the sexist and misogynistic stuff is in this article, because I kind of have a radar when people say sexist and misogynistic. I sort of think maybe it's not true, but maybe it is. So I want to see.
How can you be misogynistic without being sexist? I mean, it's a little redundant.
So that was a logical point you made yesterday, and I thought there was some validity to it. So I click on the link of this story, and basically it turns out that 90% of this story is about male presidential candidates who've lost the election and things they've done after the election, which are like things men do when they get dumped. I think number 3 was grow a beard. So I don't think that was about women. That was I think it was a picture of Al Gore growing a beard. Yeah. And then there was ones like taking a long drive, eating your troubles away. And so in no way was this an article focused on specific womany things that women do when they get broken up with. And so I noticed this, and so basically what I posted in reply to this Olivia Caridi woman was something like, I read the article, it's not really about women, my guess is you didn't read it. And that started this, I didn't expect to hear back or anything like that, but that started this back and forth with her, and she started getting really angry with me, and her followers got really angry with me for trolling her and attacking her. And eventually it got to the point where her and her followers were saying, and you can vouch for this because you read the tweets, they were saying things like, we don't have to read the article to know it's sexist and misogynistic.
I've got to add something there. So basically you were trolling her, and you were, I guess, being some sort of bigot by suggesting that she actually read the darn article, which wasn't even long and which was most
exactly.
And I got to just mention one article, and I'm not kidding. It's on the Huffington Post. You saw it too. Well, just Google it. I don't have the exact title, and I'm going to let Steve get back, but it's important to read. I'm not kidding. Put in Huffington Post, loophole that would give Bernie Sanders the presidency. Trust me here.
Oh, that's a good one to read.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't mean to get you off.
I agree. That's fine. That. So anyways, the reason I want to share this this exchange is just, if you've watched the show, one of my pet peeves is people who are big in media and journalists or people who have big followings, making these big pronouncements and saying how they're outraged and talking about how someone's a bad person or something sexist, and they haven't even done the minimal due diligence, the minimal 5 minutes of basic research to actually look into the thing they're so outraged about and that they're publicly criticizing to all their followers. And if this woman had taken 5 minutes to read the article... I
think you're being a little cruel that it would even take 5 minutes. I think it was more like 2 or 3.
I'm being generous. I'll say 5 minutes. Okay. Well, all right, so let's say 5 minutes.
She's slow.
Right. But just don't, and I don't care if it's on the left or on the right. I've said this about people on the right too. Just if you're out there and you have a lot of followers, what you say matters. And it's we have enough disagreement in this country without people stirring up people about sexism and stuff like that, and misogyny, over things that actually aren't sexist and misogynistic. And you could have seen this if you had been so not lazy as to take 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is to read the article. So please, everyone, before you get outraged online, don't be lazy and take the 5 minutes necessary to actually look at what you're supposedly outraged about. That's all I ask. So that's my little rant.
I think that concludes our, by the way, good rant. I agree completely with what you just said there, and I'm sure they're talking about in the chat room, or start talking about it in the chat room. And that concludes our first broadcast of RSBN tonight in 2017.
Bye, everyone.